Hello, and in this video I'm going to cover and show you how to build, edit, manipulate, generate, whatever you want to call it, effects like this on your images using Dither and then whatever extra main software like Affinity Photo or Photoshop or whatever you want to use. I've covered building this effect or this effects in this sort of genre or category of effect before in After Effects and Photoshop, but in today's video I'm going to show how to get a way better version of that using Dither. If you're new here or don't know what Dither is, this is a standalone software from Studio AAA that we have been updating now for 2 months. We've already added a ton of features that people have asked for, but it is a dithering app with over 50 algorithms now for getting effects like this on your images. Obviously, I'm going to cover one particular type of effect today, but this is just one category of several that you can get going in Dither. I won't go on about that for any longer. If you want more information about Dither, then the link will be in the description, or you can just watch me use it in this video. So to get straight into it, as you can see, I am on a website right now called unsplash.com. There are similar websites called like Pexels, and I'm blanking on the others right now, but just a stock photo website basically, because the first thing I'm going to do is just show you what types of images are going to work well with this effect. So to do that, I'm going to show you on screen now a video that I dithered in Dither. The video is just of a woman sort of in the original, she's like stood there with her hair blowing in the wind, and the dither effect I put on this image, you can still make out that her facial features are there. You can basically tell it's hair. You can see her moving around, her eyelids opening and closing. Even though it's just sort of a glitchy, dithered arrangement of dots, you can still see what's going on. So the reason I mentioned that is just because with this particular type of effect, diffusion basically, which is a type of dithering, it's going to heavily favor things that you can easily identify amongst the mess of like artifacts and noisy diffusion, basically is a way of putting it. So the reason I showed that example is because you're going to want to look for things like hands, faces, simple shapes, silhouettes, like easily identifiable animals, for example, like a cat or a dog, while you learn how to build the effect and learn how it works. And then later on, once you have familiarized yourself with how this works, then you can do like some more complex stuff. So you can see I've got a bunch of tabs open here because I've already found some images, but I'm just going to search face, right? Now, if you're familiar with dithering, this is not new to you, but just to cover it kind of from scratch or just from the knowledge that you need, dithering uses luminosity to determine basically the pattern or the arrangement that it outputs, right? That's a very simple way of putting it. But the reason that's important here is because if you want to get one of these faces through the dither and really see it, then what you want is a contrast between the person's facial features and the background. So for example, me right now, if we cut to me now, I'll dither this section of the video because the lighting in this room is flat. I don't have any lighting equipment. I have like a £10 ring light that's not even on right now. I don't want to be blinded while I'm recording my videos. So I'm about as lit up as like that whiteboard or that bookshelf or the prints on my wall or whatever. There is not much difference in luminosity between me and the background, which means it'll be very hard to isolate my face and my, hands using luminosity. Whereas if I turn off my lamp that's just there, it might get a bit easier. But this video is not about dithering me. So the reason I bring that up is just because when you're looking for an image or when you're rendering something, you want to render something or put something together where your subject is very, very easily isolatable, if that's a word, through setting a luminance threshold. So for example, this guy here, facial features, shadows under the nose, shadows under the eyebrows, black background. This would be very easy to isolate. So I've got a bunch open here that I'll go through, and I'll leave links to all the images I used today in the description, but I'm going to start with this one. So If I open up Dither now and just go to import and open this image up, if we then go to style, some of these are getting cropped off, but we're not going to be using any of the special effects today, so don't worry about that. And let's start with modulated diffuse Y. So it applies these lines to the image. So if you're curious, if we look at a much more simpler dither like Floyd Steinberg, all we're doing with these linear line art like glitch effects is telling the diffusion algorithm, don't diffuse this way and this way. We're just telling it diffuse one way or the other. So just diffuse over the X axis or the Y axis, which means that rather than distributing the errors like all over the place to get this dotty pattern, the dots add up into these lines. So you can still use the same, your knowledge about other dithering algorithms is applicable here, but the main difference when you're editing this in Dither is that the luminance threshold is now basically used. So if I pull this down, you'll see the lines get closer and closer together. And if I push it up, the lines will become more sparse, basically. So in other dithering algorithms, if I switch back to another one now, your luminance threshold is basically just asking how bright do you want these pixels to be before we include them in the dither. So on Atkinson, that's quite bright, but on Atkinson, if I set the luminance threshold to 0, that means there is no luminance requirement for these images pixels to meet in order to be included in the white dithering pattern, and so it just dithers everything white. This algorithm doesn't know that it's just generated like a big white block. It's just not being given a criteria that the pixels have to meet to become white, if that makes sense. So if we now start upping the luminance threshold, you'll see immediately the image is still mostly white, but you start to isolate some things. Because we are working with a good image, as I said, this, when I looked at this image on here, what I said before about it just being a good image for this is why you can get some good results from it with just a luminance threshold of 1. So same logic, if you just up it all the way here, now the pixels have quite a high threshold to hit before they are included in the final dither result. If you then go and mess with the rest of the sliders here, like lowering midtones, highlights, or contrast, you can lower the brightness of the overall image. If I disable the preview, look, so it's really dim now. So that luminance threshold that we're enforcing is going to be even harder to hit now because the image is darker. So if you want to control your diffusion, you want to think about the luminance threshold and the contrast, midtones, and highlights. And that's how you isolate parts of an image. Now, the difference, if I go back to this one, the difference here is that the higher your threshold is for these glitch effects or this type of diffusion that's inspired by modulation effects, the higher the threshold, the further apart the lines will be basically. So if we lower the contrast even more, you can still kind of make out his facial features, but with a high luminance threshold, low contrast, low midtones, low highlights, you can tweak this as much as you want. You'll be able to find a sweet spot, kind of like here nearly, where we don't have like big, bulky, grouped up lines here that don't even look like lines anymore. If you zoom in on this, it just looks like a stripy pattern. But yeah, you can actually make it look like the lines have generated over the face rather than the actual process that's happening. Obviously, we've got quite a lot of glitch effects here. So not all of them are this effect, but a lot of them go by that logic. So before I got into like actually creating the artwork, I just wanted to explain that. And if you are particularly interested in that effect, one algorithm that I want to show you is the Stucky diffusion lines. So this one, when you load it up immediately, it might just look like one of these normal error diffusion algorithms like Floyd Steinberg or regular Stucky, Sierra, or one of those that you've probably seen and messed with in the past if you've been using Dither. So this one has a scale and a line emphasis slider. And at line emphasis 1, you have basically got a very normal Stucky diffusion algorithm here that looks very similar. If I load up normal Stucky and just lower the threshold and up the contrast a bit, you can see it looks very similar. So if we go back to the Stucky diffusion algorithm, and start turning up the line emphasis, you'll see with the lower threshold, this one can get quite glitchy, like you can get some tearing like that, but you can basically build up the line pattern on your own from just the regular Stucky algorithm. Obviously, it's not as clean as some of these other ones, but it's quite cool to just be able to do that on a slider. So we left this one in. I really like this one. It's one of my favorites. But yeah, so the artwork I showed on screen at the start of the video, if you use the logic and the explanation I've just given you basically of how these work, then you don't have to pick the same preset or same style as me for this video. You can pick your own, and hopefully you can also pick your own image based on what I've told you. So I've got a bunch of tabs open here. Like I said before, I've just been searching for stuff that is going to be easily discernible, decipherable through the lines or the dots, shapes that your eye is familiar with, like that cat one I just downloaded. But if you look at an image like this, so here we've got the opposite. The background is high luminance and the foreground is low luminance. So our subject here, the woman, her hair, her facial features, shoulders, whatever, will actually be stenciled out of the pattern. If I download this now and load this into Dither, what you'll see basically is that the lines will appear, or the dots or whatever I choose will appear on this background in red, but they will leave out this shape of her nose and her chin, and you might see some of the highlights like reflecting on her cheeks, on her eyelids, and you might get some of it in the hair as well. So that is a look that you can go for, but you might look at this and think, oh, okay, cool, I can easily just do just this woman's like silhouette almost using the threshold slider. So if I try that now, just using, I'm going to go for modulated diffuse Y. So now by upping the luminance threshold and lowering the contrast, what you can see is her face and the shape of her head just being silhouetted out. Sorry if you can hear the bin men outside my house. You can always up the line scale, and that might sort of be a bit more forgiving on these lower luminance areas. You can sort of see her eye emerge there and like the lips there. But while this is an effect and it might be a look that you want, I just wanted to include this because when you're getting familiar with how this works, you might see an image like this and be like, perfect, I can do that easily, when it's not actually as easy. Even if you invert this image, the highlights are going to be in the wrong place and stuff. So what's better if you're rendering your own artwork, or if you're downloading images or looking for something, it's better to have something that is naturally lit in the right way to get the effect that you want, rather than manipulate the image into what you want basically. So anyway, I've got some more stuff open here. The original guy, two hands here, hands easy to discern through these patterns. This one's obviously going to be one of the inverted ones, but I'm going to try this one out too. Another hand here, I do have Unsplash Plus because I needed business expenses. I don't know that I would recommend it just yet, but I've got this image. This one, which again is going to be inverted. This one, obviously, hands nice and bright, background dark. Should be easy to isolate the luminance of this one. This hand here, basically perfect for this effect. This will be very, very easy to isolate. Some more hands here. Again, this is going to be the inverted one. This sort of side profile of this woman, black background, facial features lit up. The only thing that might not come through very well is the hair. But I also got this cool 3D skull by an artist called 8 Machine, who is very cool. I follow them on Twitter. I will remember to link them in the description. They put their work on Unsplash, which is really cool of them. Obviously for this one, all our highlights, all areas, the features of the skull lit up. So this will be nice and easy. And this one, again, this will be one of the inverted ones. And then last thing I just want to show is these types of photos, often in grayscale. The luminance values between this person's like forehead, nose, jawline, so similar to the background and the hair that I'm not even going to bother downloading this one to show you. Stuff like this or this one probably would not dither very well using the new algorithms that we've added that I'm going to be talking about today. So yeah, I just wanted to get that out of the way because I understand that this effect has like a high ceiling. It has a really cool potential, but you're not going to get there straight away. Just try and come to grips with how it works on simple shapes where the lighting is forgiving to what you're trying to get, and you'll be able to get to the high ceiling that way. I didn't want to just show you some cool artwork and be like, pretend it just works like that, because it does take some getting used to. But anyway, so I'm now gonna move on to an image I'm actually gonna work with. So the first one I'm gonna go for is the hand that I said would be perfect. I might look stupid here if this is difficult, but in the glitch effects, I'm gonna go for uniform modulation Y. In case you didn't realize, X and Y are just referring to the axes. X is across, Y is up and down. So look, if I go for modulated diffuse X first, then the lines are across, basically, just in case you didn't know that. But yeah, I'm going to go for uniform modulation Y on this one. And first thing is just lowering the contrast and then upping the luminance threshold. And then from here, I'm just going to tweak the highlights and the midtones. I don't really have a specific output that I'm going for here. I might mess with the scale a little bit as well, but all I want is, my goal with this effect is I want it to be as lo-fi and I want there to be as little detail as possible, but still identifiable as a hand, basically. Something that you might encounter if you go for one of the uniform effects is if you turn up the bleed fraction and your image just disappears, that's because you need to up the smoothing factor first. So this is like, obviously it's not what we're going for. This is kind of like brutalist almost, but yeah, just in case you are following along and you went for messing with the bleed fraction, you need to have a smoothing factor on for that. So if I just turn that off and turn the bleed fraction to 0, we'll get back to where we were. When you're like putting together these dithering effects, there's often lots of things like that where you add like one extra parameter and it turns into a whole new effect. And so what we've done, that's why there are so many of the glitch effects here. What we've done is just left them all in so that even though for today, this bleed fraction smoothing factor thing, I hate this for this, it looks awful, but someone might find a use for it and ultimately is a glitch. So this is still glitch art, it's still cool. I don't know. I just wanted to explain why that was in there. But yeah, if I'm just going to skip through a few of these, and I've switched to an X version of this, but I quite like that. I'm going to take this afterwards into like Photoshop or After Effects and start adding some glow and stuff. And I never saved one of these of this guy. So I'm just going to try and put one of those together as well now. Using this smooth diffuse style, I've managed to get this pretty easily just with a high smoothness factor and a low contrast. This is pretty well isolated, which means that now if I up the luminance threshold, the gaps between the lines will get bigger, but I've already isolated the face, so it shouldn't impact things too much. If you use the smooth diffuse style and put the smoothness on 10, you are basically just going to be working with one of the modulated diffuse or uniform modulation algorithms in terms of what you get out of it. Yeah, the smoothness can really help just isolating your subject or the main sort of lit up part of your image. And whenever you've managed to isolate things well, you can up the scale without like losing the person to the lines or the thing to the lines, basically. So yeah, I'm going to go for this one, kind of like here. Next, I'm going to have a go at doing it with these hands. So the hands, this is one of the images that I said would be inverted. Luckily, it still looks very cool inverted, even just with something like that. I typically don't like these backgrounds that look white with black lines. I much prefer the black background with the white lines. But for this image, because the hand sort of has the lines passing it over it, so like the hands just look so glitchy, I kind of like it. I might just try to isolate things a little bit. One thing that can also look cool is here, obviously, as you can see on this like knuckle here, yeah, what would be the knuckle on the original, it gets kind of dotty rather than being a line. So if you just add a little bit of blur, it can start to connect the lines up a little bit more. Obviously too much blur and you're going to lose your edges, but a little bit of blur can look quite cool. Yeah, I think I'm going to go for this. So just to make sure I'm not spending this entire video talking about the actual diffusion here, I'll go through and I'll show you one more of these and then I'll dither the rest on my own and then we'll move into Photoshop. So here I've got this side profile that I mentioned before. I think I noted about this one that the hair might not come through very well, but the background is black and the facial features are lit sort of evenly. So this should be quite like a forgiving image to this style that we're going for. I'm going to stay on smooth diffuse, and I think if I go like 9 with the smoothness and then reduce the contrast and up the luminance threshold. So you'll see if I up the luminance threshold too much, we start losing jawline and we start losing hair, basically. So I'm going to lower, I'm not going to go too far with the luminance threshold. I'm just going to add a little bit of blur. So you see what happened there when I add the blur. If we zoom into the jawline, you've got this whole bottom section here, which is just dots. But if I add even like 5 on the blur, let's go a bit further, 12, they kind of start connecting up. If I go to like 30, it will be a line. But then the question is like, is the rest of the image actually at blur 30, like the rest of the image is kind of still identifiable. The main part I don't like here is this cluster around like the nose and the cheekbones, just because zoomed in it looks all right, but zoomed out this looks mostly white, and I like these sections with the big gaps between the white lines. So when I change the settings here to widen these gaps, I'm also going to affect the rest of the image. So I'll just try find like a sweet spot with the contrast, midtones and highlight sliders here, where I'm able to like get some less dense lines around the nose and the cheekbones without getting rid of these like cool lines around the rest of the side profile, basically. So reducing the highlights but upping the midtones has kind of almost got me there. I'm happy with that. And then all I'm going to do now is just see if I can get away with a bigger scale of 9. To me, I can still tell that's a person. Hopefully you can as well. That'll do for me. If you went with this same image, scale 9, smoothness 9, contrast 24, midtones 80, highlights 21, luminance threshold 52, blur 30, style is smooth diffuse. And if you didn't, you can click on these and type, like you don't have to use the sliders. You can just click on the numbers and type in the value that you want. But for the rest of these images now, there will be a cut in the video to when I'm done dithering, other than this one, which with the default settings still looks really cool. So I just thought I would show you this one as well. But anyway, I will actually stop now. So this image with basically default smooth diffuse settings and lowered contrast, lowered luminance threshold, and a low smoothness looks really cool. This image as well, if you want just a fun image to dither, just get an image of any orb or sphere. This one is also from Unsplash, but you could render this out pretty easily in Blender. It's from a person or group on Unsplash called Resource Database. But yeah, if you just want something fun to dither or something fun to learn on, so you can like work out what each slider does and you know what each name here actually means, doing that with just an image of an orb or a sphere is just really satisfying to just mess with. Like I could do this for hours, but anyway, I will actually now move into Photoshop. So here we are. I've got everything open in Photoshop. As I said at the start of the video, you do not have to use Photoshop. I'm not really going to be using anything complex in Photoshop here, just blur and maybe a hue and saturation, which will be doable probably even in like GIMP or something like Photopea or Photopia, however you say it, which is like an alternative to Photoshop. But anyway, all I'm going to do, as you can see, is scale these up to my document size, which is 1080 by 1350, but you can go for whatever you want. Some of these, like this one, maybe not the best for this document size or the other hands one, but I'll work out something to do with these in the near future. So starting with the side profile, I'm just going to convert this to a smart object, even though it's already one. If you've already got a smart object, just convert it again. It won't do any harm. And then I'm going to go to filter, blur and Gaussian blur. And I'm just going to add a really small one, like 2.1. Then under smart filters here, you can see these dials. If you double click these and change the blend mode to screen, you'll see this turns into a glow. And then if you hold Alt on your keyboard, click on Gaussian blur and just drag it above itself, it'll duplicate that. You can then double click on the Gaussian blur and turn up the glow, and you can repeat that as many times as you want until you've got either a really intense glow or whatever sort of effect you might be looking for. You can then add a hue and saturation and start to add some color if you like. I didn't want to just show one option here, so another effect you can get if I do this on the hand, again, just convert to smart object, even if it's already a smart object, double click and just name the hand R, then duplicate that, name it G, and duplicate that and name it B. Then on your R layer, if you just right click and go to blending options, and then you'll get the layer styles menu and just untick G and untick B, and then go to G, right click, blending options, untick R and untick B, press OK, go to B, right click, blending options, untick R and untick G. Now, if you zoom in, there's no difference, but if you, with your arrows on your keyboard, if you just nudge out the B and nudge out the R the other way, you'll see you've now got some nice chromatic aberration, which on a small scale, you can't really notice that. But if you start knocking them like a few pixels out like this, and then zoom out, it's a little bit more noticeable. I don't know how well that comes across in the video, but if you do something like that, make it as subtle or as noticeable as you like, then click on your R layer, hold shift, click on your B layer, that will select all of them, right click and convert to a smart object. So you've still got the chromatic aberration preserved. I went quite far with mine. I maybe won't go this far for your version. I just went quite far with mine because I want it to be visible in the recording, and I still don't really even feel like it is. But anyway, if you're following along, you'll see. So you can then go and repeat the process of adding Gaussian blur or any blur really, but Gaussian blur, screen, duplicate, add a little bit more, and the glow you'll get is a little bit warmer if you look, because we've isolated these now. So yeah, you'll get a little bit of a sort of nostalgic CRT VHS inspired glow kind of thing. And then if you're not going for any sort of like digital glitch thing, if you go to my website, studioAAA.com, same website you got Dither from, if you've got that, there is a bunch of free textures you can download, and I'll likely at some point put more on in the future. So if you're watching this in the future, there might be some more free textures, but this one is from a pack called Photocopied, which is on my site. There's some other ones as well, obviously, or you can just use whatever texture really. But yeah, textures always look nice with this as well. You can take your dithered image into filter gallery, and if you do like some torn edges on it, you can get like a mixed media effect out of it almost, rather than the like digital glitch we're going for. And you can sort of run with that from there. Maybe like add a gradient map for some color, and you could add some typography, or, you know, take it as far as you want. For this video, I'm only focusing really on explaining the dithering effect, so I'm not actually going to go make any design work out of these. I just wanted to show you that there's multiple, when you understand how it works and you understand what kind of images you're looking for, there are multiple types of different effects you can get out of this genre of visual. And if you start on simple, easy to identify facial features, hands, side profiles, whatever you're like comfortable with, get used to isolating those shapes and those images in this effect, and then taking them elsewhere into your normal workflow, working with them as you normally would in your own style or whatever. You can from there start to do like more complex stuff with this style basically. What I didn't want to do was just throw out this effect and throw out some like demo image like this one on Twitter or Instagram and be like, yeah, it just works, because there's a little bit more to it than that. But I've been talking for an hour now, and I'm gonna leave the video there. I will show you the results of everything I got on screen now. If you are enjoying Dither, I would really appreciate if you go to the Dither page and leave a review. That would really help. Fun fact, if you want to ask for a feature, the best place to do it is in the review, because then I can look really good when I reply to your review and say, thanks for asking for this, we added it. There's someone I already did that to. And if you've watched all the way to the end of the video and you want to see what I'm working on or see what's next with Dither, you can go to extras and click Discord, and you will get an invite to the Discord. There's one question you got an answer to get in, but it should be pretty easy for you to answer it if you've watched this video. But yeah, other than that, thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting Dither. Hope you're enjoying update 3.0. Any issues with Dither, you can always send me an email, hello@studioAAA.com, and I'm happy to help you if you've got any problems with the software. Let me know what video you want to see next, and I will see you in the next one.